I was a little late, but still I paused to take a breath outside the door. Crossing the threshold of this room felt like passing into another world, or another time. It was not wholly an illusion. The hands of the large clock which stood next to me in the passage were quite still, the pendulum motionless. I suspected they had slept like that for years. A voice came from inside the room. "Edith?" My hand fluttered up in a habitual but futile attempt to tidy my ridiculous hair. I reminded myself that it never did any good, and opened the door. The woman who sat in the bed surprised me, no matter how many times I visited her. Her skin was milky pale, and her hair was all heavy waves of auburn, with no traces yet of grey. I always had the impression that she was a queen receiving courtiers, her carved and green-curtained bed a throne. As was her custom, she wore a loose silk gown, just such as the ones that pre-Raphaelite enchantresses did. Today, it was the shade of an overcast sky. Helena Drake also wore a smile of gentle amusement. "You are late." "I saw the most extraordinary thing," I said, sitting on my accustomed chair. "A kind of river dragon, I think, laying eggs in the bank of the river, near the falls. Look, I've marked the place." I held out to her my little notebook. This notebook had been left with me by my brother George, with strict instructions as to the kind of observations I must make about all the dragon species that lived in the dale. I couldn't be expected to keep it as well as he would, of course, but until he returned to spend the summer holidays with us, the notebook would have to put up with me. George had drawn a rudimentary map of the dale for me to mark sightings. It was the page I showed Helena now. She examined it carefully through a lorgnette, which she wore on a chain around her neck. "Ah, yes, I've seen this one many times. But you should have the place marked as foss, not falls. That is the Old Norse word that is used in these parts, and that one has a name, you know." "Oh, yes, it's known as Bess's Foss." "Is it for any special Bess?" "A very special Bess indeed," she said, with a look of meaning. "You don't mean—" I trailed off. Helena's son had told me that Queen Elizabeth herself had bestowed this land on his ancestor in recognition of services rendered, though he had been vague about what those services were. "Yes, I do," Helena answered simply. "Did she come here?" Helena nodded. "There is a bedroom here, and even a bed, in which she is supposed to have slept." "Good heavens!" At this point, there was a soft knock at the door, and the Drake's butler came in with a small animal, which he placed in Helena's arms. "Thank you, Forrester. I hope Mr. Darcy was quiet and good for his bath." Forrester bowed and left, noiseless as a shadow.